So the biggest advantage the rich have, and obviously they have tons of advantage, but it really has nothing to do with race, because the reality is that it's a lot more of a detriment than a benefit to be white in modern society per se. Now there's certain things that are related to being white, like whites have a higher overall income than being black than black people do. So all told, maybe it's still advantageous to be raised in a white family, because also white families are much more likely to stay together and have two parents, which is critical, and then higher income, that helps, higher education levels, all that. But just per se, strictly to be white itself, taking out all the ancillary factors, is a negative. I mean, everyone knows that. I mean, it's harder to get into a good college if you're white. Again, if you're just isolating purely the fact that you're white and taking out other factors. I mean, that's open. Colleges are proud of the fact that it's harder to get in if you're white. And it's obvious because you see people constantly committing fraud where they're putting down on forms that there's some race to get an advantage, and it's not white, is it? So that's kind of a tangent, though. My main point here is money, class. Why there's such an advantage to being rich, and how the rich perpetuate themselves. And I think it's really just a function of the way society works. I don't necessarily think that it was set up intentionally to be this way, but it could have been. And I know there's a lot of conspiracy-minded people and communists and stuff that are going to say that it's intentionally like this. I think it's meant to be merit-based, but the effect is such that it really doesn't end up being merit-based. Again, and it depends on how you define merit. It is merit-based in a certain way, but it's not in another way. And so this is a complex topic, so let me try to explain it. What I've said now, you might be like, huh? What's he talking about? Because I have a lot of thoughts in my mind that I haven't expressed yet. But the basic problem for poor people isn't really the fact that they're poor, per se. It's the fact that their parents are terrible, or that they don't even have parents, plural. They may have a parent if they're lucky. They may have no parents, actually. And that's, obviously, I mean, if you're a kid without parents, you're fucked in this world, I mean, humans are born vulnerable, They need parents until they're adults. That's obvious. So if you're born into this world and your parent just freaking throws you to the side, then you're fucked. And, that's not really the system's fault, per se. And so that's the extreme, but even if you had, parents that loved you to a certain extent, or one parent that loved you, if they're incompetent and they don't understand what makes financial success in the world, then they're not going to be able to set you up for that. So that's why if they're poor, then you're probably going to be poor. It's not because the system had some plot to make them poor. It's just because there were reasons why they were poor. It could have been any number of things. Like, they might just have a low IQ. They just don't have what it takes to be successful in the workplace. Or they could have had a drug problem. Or they could have had this personality disorder. Or they could have, been alcoholics. There's any number of reasons that just make it extremely unlikely that if your parents were not successful, that you're going to be successful. Now, of course, and the beauty of this country is that it's definitely possible. If you were just born with so many talents that you overcome these things, and there's plenty of examples of that happening. But that is just on the margins, though. The system allows it, but people that are that talented are rare. What's much more likely is that a lot of these high-end positions are being filled by total mediocrities that just happen to be raised by the right people. And the problem as I see it, boils down to the fact that your record of accomplishment that's going to determine where you're going to land in the hierarchy of society starts when you're 14 years old. That's when that's when stuff starts to go on your permanent record, okay? Because that's when your record starts to count towards getting into college, which is like the most important thing. What college you get into is going to be for most people. Now I know people are always this is what low IQ people do, is they cite exceptions as though they disprove the rule. Exceptions to a rule don't disprove the rule. They just prove the point that there are exceptions. And exceptions by definition are a tiny minority of cases. That's why they're exceptions. So yes, there are people that didn't go to great schools and they started a business and it was successful. But you have to understand that those people are a tiny minority of the people that are successful. The thing that's going to give you like a 90% chance of being successful is going to the right school. I mean, if you go to Harvard, what's your floor? I mean, how bad can you do at that point? I mean, if you just simply, it doesn't even matter what you do in Harvard. You could get straight D's if you get that degree. If you just say that you're a Harvard graduate, your life's going to be pretty good. You're going to be one of the elite of society. Now, you might not be the elite of the elite, but you're going to be the elite of the general population. So getting into the right school is what matters most. Again, there are exceptions, but in 90% of cases, that's what's going to matter. And there's gradations to it. I'm just using Harvard as the example. I mean, you can live a decent life, not one of the elites, but like, if you just go to a decent school, like I know someone that got a scholarship to LSU and they got a finance degree. So they did a lot of things right. They might not have been a super high achiever. They might not have had a super high IQ. They didn't go to an Ivy League school, but they got a scholarship somewhere and they picked a degree that has, a very straight track to some kind of success in life, some kind of financial success. And this person has been very successful. Whereas knowing this person, I know that I have a much higher raw IQ than this person. But I was just raised terribly in, all kinds of abusive situations, one-parent household, and being raised in squalor and physical and emotional and psychological abuse and all kinds of stuff. So when I was 14 and my permanent record was started, that wasn't even something I was aware of or cared anything about. I was out running the streets, you know what I mean? And so that's where the rich have the advantage, is the rich knows that this time when you're 14 years old and all you want to do is go out and maybe like drink, or maybe sports are your thing, or maybe you're already chasing pussy, I don't know, whatever it is that 14-year-olds want to do, what they don't, most of them don't want to do. Now there is, of course, rare exceptions like a Ben Shapiro that's just a nerd, and at 14 what he wanted to do was, things that are conducive to academic success. But that's not most kids, not even successful ones. It's because their parents made them focus on that, because their parents knew that was important, that was going to determine their entire success. And sometimes these parents get vilified, like, you wouldn't let this person do what they wanted to do, you wouldn't let them discover their true self and their artistic side and all this bullshit. It's like, yeah, because these people know that these years actually matter more than anything. 14 to 17 in high school, that's what matters. It matters more than what you do in college, because what matters really is getting into the college. Now, of course, getting the degree matters, but doing well, like getting A's, nobody gives a shit about that. It's about the degree. It's about the connections you make at these high-end colleges. And so yeah. And so that's what, I mean, it's kind of almost pointless to even get upset about it, because I have no ability to change it whatsoever, and neither do you. But there is, it is kind of like ludicrous that your whole fate and where you wind up in society comes from how well you performed when you were 14 to 17. Now, there are other factors that come in that have to do, a lot of it has to do with money too, like what school you went to. Did you go to some public high school in some shitty area, or did you go to some prep school that cost friggin' $100,000 a year or whatever, where they're gonna take a much more active role in forcing you to be successful, along with your parents. But it's not, that part's actually not necessary. You can do it at a public school as long as it's halfway decent, if your parents are forcing you to achieve, And we live in such a screwed up society, like in white America, where we're putting out all these movies about how awful it is for parents to do that. And it's like, that's exactly what a parent should be doing. Because, okay, maybe it is awful that's what a 14 to 17-year-old needs to be doing. But if that's going to determine your entire fate of your life, then that's what you need to do. That's the reality. And so, you might detect some kind of bitterness from me. And yeah, I mean, there's millions of people like me, that I know, because I've taken the standardized tests. Now I'm getting old now. I'm noticing a lot of cognitive changes. Basically, cognitive decline, where I can't remember a lot of things. I used to have a mind like a bear trap where I couldn't forget anything. I mean, I would just ace tests, 99th percentile all over the place and stuff. 99 ASVAB when I joined the Army, all that kind of stuff, Probably had about a 140 IQ. But now I'm noticing getting older, and I got sleep apnea and all this stuff, being overweight, depression, yada, 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 forgetting a lot of shit. But when I was a young man, you can tell, you take these tests, and also you get into competitive situations with people. Especially in the Army, gave me a lot of opportunity to do that, being in officer candidate school with these other, so supposedly smart, ambitious people, and I'm just running circles around them, it's just clear that that I'm just on a different level than they are, intellectually. But none of that really matters, By that time, I had already, gone to some shitty school, dropped out of it, went to some other shitty school, completed my degree in a useless degree program, history, went into the Army when I was already in my late 20s. So even though I did, become an officer and everything, that meant nothing to the civilian world. I mean, my record looks like I'm a complete piece of shit, Your actual ability doesn't matter. And you get to the point where it's too late at 17 years old, and you don't even realize it. You're so dumb at that point that you don't even realize that you're fucked. You're thinking your life's just starting. I mean, you're only 17. But if you had a high-performing parent or parents, they would be able to tell you right then, your spot, unless you can somehow scrape together some kind of a business that somehow grows. But even the business world is dominated by people that went to high-end universities and stuff. You look at a guy like Elon Musk. This isn't some guy that pulled himself up by his bootstraps. This guy went to Princeton and was able to raise money from a bunch of other people that went to Princeton. That's kind of how that stuff works. Sorry if this is negative to you or depressing, but that's for the most part how it works. Yes, there are exceptions, like I said earlier, and that's the beauty of our country, that it does allow for people to come from nothing. But I'm just telling you that the odds are so much less. You better be a real friggin' genius, and not even just a genius in terms of IQ. You better have all the skills. You better have a high IQ. You better have the social skills of a freaking, just an absolute, 100 charisma score in an RPG, to just really be able to get people to want to help you financially and stuff like that. You better have it all, and then on top of that, you better be lucky as shit and just land in the right situation. And if all that happens, they all come together, then yes, maybe you can come back from it. But for the overwhelming majority of people that are just regular people, you don't want those odds. You want the odds of, like the person I told you that went to LSU. You want to just do well in high school, at a pretty decent high school, get straight A's so that you get some scholarship somewhere, and you take a degree that isn't some bullshit basket weaving. You take a degree where it's like you understand exactly why you're getting this degree and what job this is going to go into, and what the career path is of that job. Does that job lead to CFO, or does it lead to CEO, or what does it lead to? That's how it's done. That's how a person of mediocre intelligence can be very successful. So yeah, that's it. That's the video. I know it's probably depressing, but most people's fate is pretty much sealed at 17 years old. And the only people that are aware of that and working on it are the higher income people, because they already know that that's how they got to higher income, and they know that's what their kid needs to do. The poor people have no friggin' idea. They don't even care. All they probably care about is having their beer after work. They work their ass off at the friggin', collecting the garbage or whatever, and they just want to get home and have their beer and watch the hockey game or something. And they could give two shits about what their kid is doing. And that's how these classes become perpetuated. It's not the system's fault. Of course, if there's anything that can be done with the system to help, create a level playing field, then it should be done. But the system can't really change reality, and I think that's what a lot of people want it to do, and it just can't do that. And whenever it tries to do that, it just causes a lot of harm. Like punishing the competent people, even if their competence came with from advantage, it's still not helping society to punish the competent people and benefit the incompetent people. That's never gonna help. So you don't want to go that route. But it's more of just if you have kids, just be aware that even if you weren't successful, I'm telling you right now, what's gonna maybe break the chain and make them successful? They have to take high school seriously. Now, like I'm telling you, it starts at 14, so there's some room for error in elementary and middle school, but I wouldn't look at it like that, because that's where the foundation's being formed for how they're going to perform in high school, and that's where the habits are being formed. So really, honestly, it starts like from birth. That you have to hold your kid accountable. You have to force them to be good in school. You can't take this just blasé attitude about it. I'm sorry. That seems to be what a lot of people want to hear, that you should just let kids fuck around. But if you want them to be successful, I guess maybe you could make the argument that being financially successful isn't important. And it really isn't necessarily the most important thing, but being poor sucks ass too. So anyway, just some knowledge from an old guy for you.